Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you here today. In this session, I'll be speaking on Plastic-Free July, which really is a case study in behaviour change and what we think is best practice. And so you've heard a bit of an introduction of me, but effectively I've spent the last 6 years heading up organisations that do waste processing. I also hold the position of chair of the Plastic-Free July Foundation. And so the founder, Rebecca Prince-Ruiz, is not unable to be here today, so I'm picking up the mantle on her behalf. And I'm hoping that gives you a richer perspective. You're sitting in an education stream, and that is Rebecca's background is as a waste educator. And certainly my background is more as a processor or an operator of facilities. Yet even with those different backgrounds, we both see the value in what Plastic-Free July has to offer in terms of achieving good outcomes. And so I'd like to introduce the campaign to you and spend some time drawing out the learnings that we've found in the behavioural change space. And I think you'll probably see a lot of commonalities with what Ryan's talked about and some of his observations. Just as a quick sort of a straw poll, who of you had heard of Plastic-Free July before the conference? Oh, okay, that looks about 88%, which, like all statistics, is very reliable. So in the beginning, Rebecca didn't start out to start a campaign. In fact, it all started out with a small group of waste educators from WA's smallest local waste management authority, the Western Metropolitan Regional Council, and for those waste educators wanting to change their own behaviour. So Rebecca in this photo is visiting a waste on the left-hand side, a waste recycling facility as part of an Earth Carers program, which is a local government-led but community-based education program that takes people on a journey of their waste. So where does it go once you throw it in the bin? And at the time she did this tour, she was absolutely blown away by the amount of plastic that was being sent through these facilities. And so she went home and decided, just for a month, to try and reduce the amount of plastic that her family, her household, was putting into the system. And so that group of 3 part-time staff from the Western Metro and 35 volunteers took on the challenge. And so they exchanged ideas and tips and recipes and quickly realised that it's actually hell of a hard to avoid plastic. It really is in everything that we consume. And so each of them kept a dilemma bag, and that's them on the right-hand side there with a bag with all the plastic that they couldn't avoid or couldn't find a solution for. And so that's the group of the first participants of the program back in 2011. And so for the team, shopping at supermarkets meant coming out almost empty-handed. And so they have to stick with the challenge. They had to go to farmers markets or local stores and all the time remembering to have to take their own reusable bags and containers for the produce. And so it was a challenge and frustrating and at times overwhelming, but doing it together gave them a real sense of support and purpose. And they learned that people value being part of something bigger, that collective, as you move up that Maslow's hierarchy. And the focus on recycling that we have in our society was ineffectively working against those better outcomes of waste avoidance. And so we're actually all really good at what we do in terms of the home separation at home and putting things into our recycling bin and then sending that off for processing. You know, all those sorts of things that get local governments and engineers very excited, all the back-end stuff, that we forget that there are actions further up the waste hierarchy which are actually a better outcome for our waste. And so they decided to do this every year, and so Plastic-Free July was born. And so the original 40 people who participated in 2011 increased by tenfold the following year, so to 400 people in 2012. In 2013, that increased by tenfold again, so from 40 to 400 to 4,000 people. And not just in Western Australia, where this started, but across Australia and even internationally. And so when someone consciously changes their behaviour by avoiding single-use plastic, it's pretty visible to the people around them. And it starts conversations with your family members, with your friends, with your colleagues, and with retail staff. When you arrive at their store with your reusable bag or your coffee cup, that engenders a conversation right there. Or when you start to ask for your products without packaging, or summon the courage to ask for a drink without a straw. And so Rebecca's had a particular meltdown day in public when she's been in a restaurant and has asked for a drink without the straw, subsequently to have the waitress bring across a drink with 2 straws in it, kind of to make the point. But people weren't satisfied, though, with just changing their own behaviour. They wanted to make a difference by sharing the challenge with others and to change the culture around them, around the use of single-use plastics. And so people started having plastic-free morning teas at work, or doing bin audits at their schools, or holding a waste-free Wednesday lunch, or running workshops on how to live plastic-free. They made posters, screened documentary films, did beach cleanups, talked to cafe owners, and set up bag-sharing stands at local farmers' markets. And so this slide shows a group of folk at the University of Western Australia's Oceans Institute having a plastic-free morning tea, and a school in New South Wales taking up the plastic-free challenge. Over the ditch, one town on the west coast of New Zealand was very active in promoting a plastic-free lifestyle, and they even held a Plastics Anonymous weekly Friday night support session at the local pub to debrief their experiences, and obviously straws were banned by the hotel. We've also seen a group in Cambodia engaging in the Plastic Free July campaign to tackle their local plastic waste issues, and they've picked up our branding and material there. The right-hand photo is the Wasteless Pantry in the Perth Hills, and that was started after the owners Amanda and Janine did a Plastic Free July challenge, but couldn't find any stores in their area that were selling bulk food where they could get produce without packaging. So they went off and started their own shop, and at the moment they produce about 3 kilograms a month of landfill waste out of their operation. And so they're continuing to interact with local suppliers to get local produce, and the facility manager where their shop is based to reduce packaging on produce. And so this next slide is really the crux of the campaign, and it's really simple. Choose to refuse single-use plastic for the month of July. That really is the hook or the concept of the campaign. And it has 4 attributes to it for us that we think make all the difference. It's simple. It's a really simple idea, that. It's solutions-focused, it's achievable, and it's positive. I'll repeat those 4 for you. It's simple, solutions-focused, achievable, and positive. And an important part of the success of Plastic Free July is that we didn't set out to tell other people what to do or to change their behaviour. We set out to change ourselves. And what we learned was that many other people just needed a prompt to bring this to the surface their own concerns about overconsumption, plastic waste, and plastic pollution. And so one of the challenges we found, and I think it's consistent with some of the observations Ryan was making, is that confronting people with images of marine wildlife being harmed by debris in our oceans, or the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that gyre, really has very little success in changing mainstream behaviours. Instead, Plastic Free July provides practical solution and a movement for change that connects with people's shared values as citizens, that idea of being part of the group again. And so we aim to empower rather than to educate. And in the first 6 years, so it started in 2011, we saw the campaign spread across Australia and across the world. Participation grew exponentially, the 40 to the 400 to the 4,000 in the first 3 years. And mainstream media covered the event. Social media posts were starting to go viral. And if you listen to the language of my children, this had become a thing, or even if you like, a hashtag. And so we knew that Plastic Free July was becoming a popular movement, but our questions were really around, was it making a difference? And if so, how do we take it into the mainstream? And I suspect those are challenges faced by lots of organizations or projects trying to do behavioral change type work. How do you measure the impact of all the good stuff that we're doing? And how do you appeal to a wider mainstream audience, beyond those people who I can classify perhaps as already being believers? And it's all very good to have a zero waste goal where the 100 people you're dealing with can put all their waste for a year in one little glass dish. That's good. But how do we make 100,000 people reduce their plastic consumption by, say, 5 or 10% in a year? How do we take it from, sorry, you're all awake now. How do we take it from the 100 people to the 100,000 people? So this fellow in the picture here, his name is John, and he's actually Rebecca's neighbour in Fremantle, and he's become one of the 100,000. So Plastic Free July is a simple challenge with a positive focus, a clear message, and real people participating and generating content. Probably a very difficult slide to read, but in 2017 we received a modest grant from the WA Waste Authority, and we engaged a behavioural economist to develop a communications toolbox for Plastic Free July. And as a result, 2017, last year, became quite a pivotal year for Plastic Free July. We worked through a process using program logic to target the solutions, formative research to discover which behaviours people were willing to change first, testing the tools of change to ensure they actually triggered the desired behaviour in people, and evaluating the responses and results. Importantly, the formative research was conducted using a social market research company to survey the wider community, and we didn't start with any presumptions. So these general public surveys of consumer behaviours, attitudes and intentions showed high levels of public concern around plastic waste and ocean plastic pollution. Something like 90% of the people surveyed had those as concerns. And the avoidance of plastics was considered a strong social norm, but one which had a weak flow through to actual waste avoidance behaviours. And so we focused on the most effective behaviours, those with a high probability of adoption and a real impact on littering, waste streams and resource consumption. And so for us, that included avoiding prepackaged fruit and vegetables at your grocery stores, switching to reusable shopping bags, and refusing plastic takeaway food and beverage containers. And so we also developed some case studies about organisations that were doing that successfully. So testing the toolbox on the streets was a surprising but very useful exercise. We discovered that people didn't want to be overwhelmed by the scale of the plastic pollution problem. They didn't want to go plastic free, and they didn't want to do something just for July. What they did want to do was a choice of actions to suit them. So it goes back to that comment around you're free. That rated very highly. And they wanted to be part of a social norm. So they wanted to belong to a clan or to a crowd. And so our messages features big images of reusable cups and bags, a big choose to refuse call to action, and small images of plastics to avoid and the plastic-free July wording. The language used in the toolbox resources was designed to appeal to the mainstream community, hence the choose to refuse message, and not just the activists and the already converted. The tools created included downloadable and editable posters for businesses, stores and cafes to which they could add their own ideas and put on display. The posters highlighted taking the challenge, avoiding plastic bags, takeaway coffee cups and straws. And the editable versions also empowered the businesses and community groups to offer discounts for reusable containers. So if you bring in your coffee cup, we're happy to give you $1 off your coffee. Well, it is Perth though, so probably 50%. And promote the use of recycled boxes, and we even found people translating it into their own languages. So the evaluation of the 2017 campaign involved repeating the survey a month after people had done the challenge. So online registrations for the Plastic Free July campaign in 2017 more than doubled. So that is, they more than doubled the number of people who had registered in the preceding 6 years. So stop and think about the significance of that for a moment. Not just doubled the previous year, doubled the cumulative number of people from the previous 6 years. So we're talking about direct, measurable cause and effect as a result of the changes we made based on the behavioural work that we had undertaken. Changes made that year by the participants themselves in the target behaviours were measurable. So participants were 20% more likely to always take their reusable shopping bags with them, to avoid prepackaged produce, and to refuse disposable takeaway coffee cups. So for the first time, we measured waste avoidance, not waste diversion. And as an operator, we tend to be focused on waste diversion from landfill, those sorts of stats. But here we have the opportunity to measure waste avoidance. So participating households in WA reduced their landfill waste tonnage by 7,600 tonnes over the course of the month, reduced their consumption of recycled plastics by 2,800 tonnes, or 6%. And that doesn't include what they were buying refusing at takeaway places and cafes. And so the main learnings that we think may be useful to you were that the scale of the plastic problem tends to overwhelm people and lead to inaction. When I see the enormity of the problem, how can I, as an individual consumer, take any steps to address that? But we can overcome that attitude behaviour gap by highlighting simple actions as the new norm, providing choices and allowing people to decide the what and the why and the how of how they intend to act, and enabling people to discover the next action they want to take on plastics. And then once they've done that, to progress from personal action to influencing and helping others. And once they've done that, then to start calling businesses and governments to account in this space. But if we take a step back from the detail of the case study, why should you or I care about plastics? And I've got a great little graph here if you can see that. So this is a graph of our cumulative plastic production over time as a planet, as the Earth. The black line is all the plastic that's ever been produced, and the red line is what of that hasn't been recycled. It's a pretty confronting graph, isn't it? There's not a lot of space between the black line, what we're producing, and the red line, which is the gap between those is what we're recycling or using beneficially. So if that concerns you, if you look forward to the 40-year projection, the black dotted line is what's forecast to happen with our plastic production as a species on planet Earth. You're looking at something like a 5-fold increase. And while the red line does go up, and we are recycling a greater proportion of that plastic, we'll still be landfilling 2 to 3 times more plastic in the future than we are today. That's a crazy number, after I've just told you not to look at the enormity of the problem. But so to help change that forecast future to what we regard as being our preferred future, we've now established Plastic-Free July. We've taken it out from the local government where it was housed, and we've created an independent not-for-profit company or a for-purpose company. And our vision there, as it's up on the screen, is a world without plastic waste. That's what we as an organization are striving for. And so our mission is to build a global movement that dramatically reduces plastic use and improves recycling. We want to see that red line on the graph drop right off. Let's be using plastics that we can recycle more beneficially. Thank you. So where to next? Well, in fact, let me back that up. The graphic on the left are the little green people. So remember I talked about the 40 to 400 to 4,000. Last year we had 2 million people participate in the campaign. So 2 million people in the space of 7 years. And that's across 159 countries across the world, which if you do the math, according to Wikipedia, says we are covering 82% of the globe. That's astounding for a little program that started out in WA. And so where are we going to next? Well, we want to create a movement heading upstream. So we've dealt with personal behavior, but we want to start targeting the problem at the source. And that's engaging with industry and governments to find solutions to this plastic problem. My last slide there is a shameless plug for Plastic-Free July. So you've heard the sell and you've heard the change that it's making, and we'd really encourage you to be part of that movement. So to join us for the campaign, which kicks off in July this year. And the takeaways, again, just on the behavioral change stuff, keep it simple, keep it solutions focused, keep it achievable, and keep it positive. And you're going to see people come along for that journey. Thank you.